Is negative news making you feel ill? Is it making you feel like the world is coming to an end and everything is terrible? And it's affecting your performance, it's affecting your productivity? This episode is for you. Stay tuned. See, it's no secret that emotional content from TV and movies can affect your mood, which affects your thinking and which affects your behavior. Like watching When They See Us, that Netflix documentary about the Central Park Five. After watching that, you feel angry. And after watching The Great British Bake Off, you just want cake. Studies have shown people who watch negative news are more stressed, they're more anxious, and they think more disastrously about their personal and professional problems, even if those personal and professional problems have nothing to do with the news.
In a study published in the British Journal of Psychology, a team of researchers studied the psychological impacts of negative news.
They made 3 different news bulletins. The first bulletin was all negative news, things like murders and accidents. The second bulletin was positive news, things like people winning the lottery or recovering from illness. And the third bulletin was more emotionally neutral news, where there was not overly negative or not overly positive. Something like Apple launches yet another iPhone. It happens every year. We know it's going to happen, so there's no excitement about it anymore. They shared the 3 bulletins to 3 different groups of people. And as they predicted, the people who watched the negative news were significantly more anxious and sadder than the people who watched the positive news. But you know what the interesting finding was in that experiment? Not only does the news make you sadder and anxious, it makes you exaggerate your own worries on topics completely unrelated to the news you just watched. For example, if you've been watching the news lately, you might be quite concerned that democracy is dying a terrible, slow death. And it might feel like the end is near when you've run out of Marmite. Come on, you know you love it. And in a similar study by Sean Acor and Arianna Huffington, after they showed the positive, negative and neutral news, later in the day, they asked the participants, how was your day? And those who watched the negative news, a third of them were more likely to say their whole day was terrible. But those who watched the positive news, almost 90% of them said they had a good day. So if you want to have a good day, begin by reading articles like Birds Help Me Heal from a Breakdown, Homeless Man Reunites with Daughters After 27 Years, or you could watch videos like Goats Who Scream Like Humans. So not only does watching negative news make you sad, make you anxious, make you worry more, makes you the biggest exaggerator in the entire universe, there are far worse things it does to you. Let's go over there. Come on. Have you noticed how this plant follows me around? I'm trying to make it look pretty for you. So where were we? Watching the news also makes you distort reality. Now, what does that mean? There's this cognitive bias that we have. It's called the availability heuristic. What that means is you base your view of the world according to information you can easily recall. This bias makes you heavily weigh your judgments towards more recent information, making your opinions biased towards the latest news. This explains why people think terrorism kills more people than heart disease. Just look how many people search for the word terrorism versus how many people search for heart disease. Way more people search for terrorism than heart disease. Now look at the news coverage that terrorism gets and versus heart disease. How many people actually die of terrorism versus heart disease? It's the absolute opposite. So people have this skewed version of reality. It's distorted. It's based on what they see recently. And this availability heuristic also explains why people think Jaden Smith is cooler than Will Smith, which, by the way, I completely disagree. Sure, Jaden Smith gave us the coolest moonwalk we've ever seen since Michael Jackson's Motown 25 performance, yeah. But Michael Jackson did it first. Will Smith, on the other hand, gave us getting jiggy with it. You cannot compare the two. I don't know if that joke landed, but tell me if it's funny or not. And news can also make you aggressive. Alarming news and alarming stories can trigger cortisol, which is your body's stress chemical, stress response, and the effects are fear and aggression. Worst of all, news is engineered to be addictive, something I think few people realize. Professor of psychology Jackie Andrade from the University of Portsmouth, she said that news is packaged in a way that drips in little pieces. You consume it, you don't feel satiated, you feel awful after consuming it, and you want to go back and have more. Just like eating white bread, one slice is never enough, but you feel awful after eating it. Presenting news in small snippets leave you with this feeling of incompleteness. So this sense of incompleteness makes you have more frequent thoughts of the news. These thoughts spontaneously burst into your head, interrupting your flow. Also, watching something so powerfully alarming like the news can release adrenaline, and it can have an addictive effect on our nervous system. It's why people like roller coasters and bungee jumping. It gives them this rush, and watching the news can also give that feeling to you. And okay, so this is the picture. What can you do about it? Well, here are 5 things you can do to curb your negative news addiction. Don't watch negative news first thing in the morning, because if you do, you will want to go back and continue snacking all day long and you'll feel awful. Instead, do your 3 most important things first, and avoid watching news within the last hour of you going to sleep, because that will play on your mind and it affects the way you sleep. When major news breaks, avoid social media, because those are the outlets where people dump their rage, and you'll see your feeds are just a waterfall of rage and anger, and sitting there and reading that waterfall of anger is like going to a buffet where all the food is rotten and past their sell-by date and spoiled, but you go and eat it anyway. Not a good idea. It won't make you feel good, right? And start your day reading empowering stories, empowering content, productive content that makes you feel good. I've shared some links below of some websites you can go and look at, or stay off the internet and read some books. And clear the clutter in your mind by practicing mindfulness. Now, I have covered it in a few previous episodes, so I won't share techniques now. There are links below. Helps you offset the distorted reality that's created from watching the news. And you can do that by reading history, because we often think that what's going on now is the worst it's ever been. Now, I'm not suggesting you completely ignore the news and you bury your head in the sand. Just be more strategic, like this guy. If you don't control your news consumption, the news will control you. Thanks for watching Coffee and Wisdom. I'm Anis Kizilbash, and I will see you in another episode. What, Whiskey? You want to sit on my lap? Yeah? You want to sit on my lap? You going to help them? You say hello. Say hello. Hello. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Really?